So Andrew Fredericks, everybody, from jail to yoga.
Yeah, what a trip it's been.
Yes, it's a story I think that's very that people will find helpful to them. Like it's insightful.
I mean, it has been.
There. So the first thing is it allows the audio and the video to synchronize, right? So that when you clap, it gives him a point of there's an apex when you clap on the sound, and then he can take the video and then he can align that and then easily sync the two together.
Because he sees it in the sound waves, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the second thing is the silence is for the sound guy. So all that ambient noise, he can just adjust the settings and just strip it out.
Brilliant.
So it's kind of cool. Like I'm learning all kinds of cool stuff. Like
yeah.
And a shout out to Farnood and Barost. The first episode I recorded it and then I sat on it for like 2 months.
Why?
Because I didn't feel like editing. I had zero desire to edit. And then Farnood just reached out to me and he's like, hey buddy, like what's going on with the Sans episode? And I'm like, well, like I have zero desire to do this. The guy I was gonna use to edit, he's not really interested, like he's not responding. And I didn't want to force him to like respond.
Yeah.
And so then he said, I'll do it. He said, just give it to me, I'll have it done in a week. And he did.
Hey.
Yeah, so thank you, Farnood. Like Farnood is a huge reason that this is progressing.
Hats off to you, my man.
Thank you.
And he's a big reason. Like I'm a type of person where I don't need another person to tell me what to do, but I need people around me to keep me motivated to like, do something. So
it's that push, that like accountability as well too, because like starting something and then not finishing it.
Yes,
it's having team members to be encouraging is helpful for all successful projects.
Absolutely, and so I can't thank him enough.
Yeah.
And Barost. I'll tell you a cool story about Barost is Farnood says I'll do it, right? I didn't know that Farnood was just doing the audio, or excuse me, the video. Barost does the audio. And Farnood sends it back to me, and then he's like, "It's all done." And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, "Thanks, man." He's like, "Just let you know, Barost did the audio too."
Hey.
So
That's cool how it all kind of came together.
Yes, so I really appreciate them both a lot.
Yeah.
Yes,
I appreciate you for inviting me down here. This is
absolutely, and I'm happy for the invitation. When I texted you, I was like, I have no idea if he's interested or not, but like, tell that story. That was interesting that you told me. It's very short, but like you were contemplating being on a podcast?
Dude, the day before you asked me, my mom, she just got to the hospital from knee replacement surgery, and I went out for a walk. And I usually go for a walk like every day up and down like the boulevard, and just get my steps in. But this particular day, I don't know what it was. I just was getting some energy out, whatever it was. I guess the stress was gone now. My mom's going back home and safe, and I was just like walking and contemplating a lot of things. And I was like, there's some stuff that like needs to be talked about like on a podcast, but I just didn't really know how we would kind of come together. And then when you messaged me the next day, I was like, no way. Like I'm trying to manifest a lot of shit out there, but like not this quickly, right? So yeah, it was pretty cool. Like it really made me think about like, okay, well, what are the things that, we can like make happen and come true, right? And what's the senseless stuff that just doesn't need to be given attention?
I've wondered that. I've heard, like, I don't fully believe it, but you've heard of that concept of like there's this theory of like that if you materialize something in your head, it will come to fruition. Like there's I I don't want to call them crazies, but there's a faction of people who believe this thing really strong. I don't know what that's called. You know
The
what
law
I'm
of
talking about?
attraction.
Yes,
It's called The Secret. There's like a book on it. There's a movie on it. It's a tough sell, but I mean, like the stories in it were pretty interesting. But yeah, it's kind of difficult to quantify for sure. And I mean, if that were the case, I mean, like I think that we would all of our dreams would be coming true.
Yeah, I think like this is how far I believe into it, which is that if you are focusing on something, right? Like I'm trying to attract this idea or this thing in my life, and you're putting attention into it, then you will naturally do things to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you on that, 100%. Yeah, attention, our focus. I think that is just like our strongest superpower, right? Like, the world is so distracting these days. It's very easy to lose sight of like what we want to do or what we think we're supposed to be doing. But yeah, this was something that was brought to my attention back in like 2020. A friend of mine, Ashley, we met on Bone Island where we were doing some volunteering, and we got into some story sharing. And she's like, "Why don't you have a TikTok or like a YouTube channel where you like talk about all this stuff and share all of it?" I'm just like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know."
When you said you've been thinking about this since 2014, are you talking about the law of attraction or the podcast or like your sharing your story?
So no, from 2020.
2020, my bad.
Yeah, the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. I never really thought of anything else like TikTok or anything like that, but she just kind of brought it up, and I'm just like, I wouldn't really know how to get started. And then I see that there's actually a lot more people doing it out there too, that have such incredible stories to be sharing, and it's definitely gaining like a lot of traction. And yeah, I mean, you know the stats on podcasts, and
I know they're crazy. I know it's something like there's like I'm going to botch that statistic, but it's 800,000 podcasts or something crazy, but only like less than like 80% of them or something like this do like less than 10 episodes. So if you can make it past that threshold, you're in a subset of the group.
Well, we're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for folks who aren't aware, you're interested yourself in starting your own podcast, correct?
Yeah. I mean, you just shared like some key points and like some equipment that I would need to get. My home is really quiet and welcoming. I could absolutely do to my home. So, yeah, I think I just need to give it some more thought and focus.
What types of stories or like people or what's your podcast about?
I think I would want to talk to people that have like overcome a lot of hardship. And I mean, everybody has like their own stories, and which is very unique to each person. But I think that like each person has to go through like sometimes like a really difficult degree to like overcome certain things. And then there's other people who have lives where things just kind of go easy for them, right? So I think I'd want to talk to the ones that like really struggled and kind of overcame the odds when the deck was stacked against them.
And is that partly what you've gone in your own life?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, things weren't always easy. It took a lot of self-reflection and development to go through. From the moment of getting on parole to like living another 4.5 years under conditions. You're free, but you're not really free. So always having to like have just kind of be looking at the mirror and figuring out what's the reason for this? Why am I doing this? Having to like really go into like humbling situations and just not go back to like an old person.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did it feel like you mentioned that you were paroled, so you've been in prison. So when you get out of prison, what are the thoughts going through your mind? Like you're out, you're like, what do I do with my life? Like, do you try to improve yourself? Do you go back in the old style? Like, talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was in prison, I made a choice to turn my life around because I thought that I would be turning my life around with my partner at the time. And that didn't work out. She stuck around for a year, but called it quits. So that's when I had to like go into a dark place and get out of that, and then realize that like, okay, I got to just do this for me now. And then that's when I moved out to BC. My family was out here, and it was better to be near family than being back where I'm from. And yeah, like there's no way that I would have gone back to doing what I was doing, because, you know, the day that I got out, I was like, okay, now it's real. Up until you actually step out and you get that parole, it's kind of just like, oh, this could change at any time. Like you could get denied in your parole hearing for any reason, even if your parole officer supports you. You could get in an altercation the day before your hearing, and then you don't get your parole, right? Okay. So it wasn't until like I actually got granted parole, then I still have to sit for like another 10 days or something until I get out. So yeah, a little anxiety there too. Yeah. But yeah, once I like stepped out and my dad picked me up and, you know, started driving, you know, I started smoking like my first cigarette again. And I was just like, okay, so life starts now again.
What was it like having your father pick you up from prison? Like, was that have any emotions associated with that?
So he's my stepdad. So okay. Yeah, I'll put that out there. Yeah, he's been my stepdad since I was 7 years old. And when I was in prison, this is how I learned to like, I found like a whole new way of like loving my stepfather. Like we never used to say I love you, right? But because he was there and supported my mom and didn't turn their back on me when I was in there, that's when I got out and I'm like, okay, I'm going to start showing this man some respect, because not only is he treating my mother right, he's also hasn't turned his back on me. And so when he picked me up, like, yeah, I just knew that, yeah, he was he's a real dad. He might not know it because he grew up without a father.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm only realizing now that he might feel like he doesn't know how to be a father. His dad was actually one of the last 3 people to be hung in Canada. Hung? And he was wrongfully convicted of murder. Wow. Yeah, you can Google it. It's called the Wilbert Coffin case.
How do you know he was wrongly convicted?
Because years later, after the person who actually killed the people, the son was there. And then after the real killers passed away, the son came forth and told the authorities that it was some relative of theirs that actually did it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in Canada, it's outlawed now. The what's it called when the government capital punishment?
Oh yeah, death penalty.
Death penalty.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I can't remember the year that he got hung, but yeah, it's probably sometime in the 50s or 60s. I'm not sure.
What was that a pivotal case in changing the law? Like realizing that there was the wrongful execution?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that one. My dad would know for sure, because he's actually going through a case right now because he wants to clear his dad's name. But yeah, he would know more about that than I would. But yeah, because being one of the last 3, I'm not sure what the stories are like of the last 2. I don't know if the other 2 were wrongfully convicted. Maybe they were hung like for real reason. I don't know. But yeah.
Wow, that's unimaginable to think like that the government killing the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah. And then now having to own up for it too. Like they're going to have to pony up because like the facts are there. The case was sealed for so many years, but it gets unsealed after like 50 years or something like that. And there's a firm called Aidwick that works on the case and starts getting it in front of the right people to get some more awareness around it. My dad was actually on a podcast a month or 2 ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Talking about this issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he said ever since that podcast, it started to get even more traction.
Is there going to be like a restitution to your family in some way from the government to like, they can't undo what they've done.
How do you put a price on not being able to grow up with a father? That's when I asked my dad that. I'm like, what's the end game here? Not in like a mean way, but like asking him genuinely. And he's like, I just want to, when I die, he's like, I just want to know that my dad's name was cleared. That's it.
That's very admirable.
I asked, I'm like, what are you expecting out of them? And he says, he's like, well, you can't really put a price on that. So yeah, we'll have to just wait and see.
Yeah. What's crazy about what you said is like, I'm from the US and they still do capital punishment in the US.
They what?
Still do capital punishment
yeah.
in some states in the US.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
Texas.
Texas, yes. I don't think they do it in California. I think they do it in Ohio, where I'm from.
Okay.
I'm against it for two reasons.
Mhm.
One, the case of wrongful conviction, but two, I believe that for people who actually committed the crime, that rather than just kill the person,
Mhm.
that the state should use that person to figure out why they committed the crime in the first place, how to identify and prevent this from the population to do it in the future. But when you kill the person, you can't do that anymore, right? But like, if you're 40 years old and you commit murder, then hey, that might be 40 years, 50, 60 years that you can study that person to try to learn and prevent.
Get into the psychological aspect.
Yes.
Of it, yeah. Like what they did with the DC sniper. They killed him and sentenced the kid to like 100 and some odd years, something like that. But yeah, there's so much more that could have been found out if that didn't happen.
For sure. And one is, like you're saying, the mental state of the person. And then two, the other one is like what's going on in society.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I watched a couple episodes of that Catching Killers. And yeah, when I'm watching these episodes, I'm wondering like, what is it that, like, what were the conditions that someone grew up in that made them feel like this was an okay thing to do? And yeah, I don't know, but I asked that question myself, wanting to know the psychology behind it.
I was talking with my friend actually last week about this because she watches those serial killer documentaries, and they do statistics on them, and they're like the US has like 5% of the world's population, but like 40% or something crazy like this of the serial killers in the world. And then she asked me, she's like, how come the US has so many serial killers? And I pondered it, and I have zero research into it, but my intuition says that in the North American culture, it's a very individual culture, both from you as a personal person, but even as the family unit, right? So like, if you have shitty parents, then you're fucked. But in like, if you're like in a Mexican culture, or you're in like a Latin American or other cultures around the world, it's more community raising, right? So that if they identify that, like not when I mean, if the community identifies like, hey, like Andrew, like his parents aren't teaching him well or that kind of thing, they're kind of there to step in, right? Or like just having one person who believes in you is huge.
Yeah, that voice of reason. Yeah and it's like, tell me, like, I don't know, you're born in the States, right? So what are some of like the first like 3 amendments?
Yeah, the first 3 minutes. Okay. So I'm terrible on the amendments, but I know, I think the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. The First Amendment is free expression, right? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And then the Third Amendment, I don't even know. I'm terrible here.
So it's like you're already born into this identity that you feel you have to uphold because it's your country.
Yes.
And that, I think that can spawn so many behavioral things that are just automatically implied on a child, on teens and then growing up, right? And yeah, without like the right parenting, we don't really know what like the right or wrong way is to stand by some of these principles. Yeah, I've always kind of wondered that, because yeah, like the statistics of the States is they're surprising.
They are surprising. I've also wondered too. There's some really good things and bad things about the States, like any country, right? Like Canada, there's great things and bad things about it, as any other country around the world. what I love about the U.S. is freedom of expression, right? I also love that there's like this goal-getter attitude that's like no one's going to take care of you. Like you need to do the work in order to live your life. I remember my father, like, we were talking about the military once. And I was like, yeah, like I would never want to be in the military. He was in the military. Okay. And I was like, if I ever was in the military, I would just do the worst possible job ever. And then he's like, no, son, you never want to do that. He's like, if you're in the military, you want to do the best job possible because you don't want to be on the front lines.
You serve your country.
Yes. Exactly. So I enjoy that aspect. But so the individualism, I'm a huge fan of, but if you take it to the extreme and you don't back it with the opposite, like there's a balance, right, of principles. So if you don't have the community engagement aspect too, then it can lead to the what's happening there, right? And some of the extremes, that occur.
Yeah, there's always that encouragement for live the American dream.
Yes,
right? Create your dream, create your path. And I guess from state to state it's different, and individual is different. But yeah, there's those ones where it's more amplified and more supported in some and less in others.
For sure.
But tying it back into the individualism, even people who like grow up in, like towns and cities that we've never heard of in the States. And then they move to like, the Big Apple or California and they just make it happen. Yes. Yeah. Cause there's that drive, there's that enthusiasm.
Yes. And it's encouraged too. I feel, I'm not saying it's negative. I'm just saying like it's my experience. I feel in Canada, it's less encouraged to be an overachiever, to challenge a perspective, or be a game changer type person. It's like more so just do what you have to do to just keep the status quo.
Say your sorries all the time.
Yeah, say your sorries.
Be really polite. Yeah.
I say sometimes as a joke to people, and like there was someone like, I'm sorry, and I'll be like, you don't have to be sorry. And here people, they don't know what to do when you say that. Like when you tell someone in Vancouver, oh, you don't have to be sorry, don't worry about it. Like
I know. If I could like bump into somebody and spill my coffee on them and they say sorry to me, it's like, that was all me.
Yeah.
We're just like so conditioned to like, just be polite and always be sorry and hold the door open for everybody. And when are we putting ourselves first?
Yes.
I mean, I think we only do that when we get to a certain age.
And again, I think it's that balance, right? Any one of those things, right? Being too far one side of saying sorry too much, but not just saying sorry, but like not sticking up for yourself. Because I was historically guilty of that, of like not having as much self-confidence or sticking up. When my mom used to say, you need to like stand up for yourself more. So there's that aspect, and then there's the opposite, which we're talking the too much individualism.
Yeah. I was, I don't really know the whole process of people who have like kind of come to Canada. But from a couple of people that I've spoken to that have like come here from different countries and they've gone through like the ESL program and stuff, the English schools aren't necessarily teaching them to communicate and express themselves, more or less just teaching them just to get by. Yeah. Which makes it, there's this dude that we met in a sauna, and he was kind of chatting. He's like, yeah, I was never really set up to kind of learn to communicate with people and share and be personable. We're really just kind of taught this language just to kind of, okay, thank you, goodbye, please, here, just getting by on things. And it kind of made me wonder, like, how are people finding their way? How are people finding their drive if they're not really being encouraged to do that?
Do you find it's different, the location in Canada, like Vancouver versus like East Coast or rural versus living downtown? Do you notice a difference in how people express themselves, or if they're more cold or warm or like that kind of thing?
Well, I've only lived, so I was born in Ontario, but I moved when I was 7 and then grew up in Winnipeg, basically. So I always just say I'm from Winnipeg. And it's called Friendly Manitoba, but not everybody's really friendly there. And coming out here, there's just so much more culture here. And even some of the same ethnicities from like Winnipeg and compared to out here, they're still living 2 separate lifestyles, even though they still have like the same background. So I guess to like answer that question is I find it more fruitful here for sure. Like I haven't gone back to Winnipeg I haven't been there since 2009.
Wow.
I've got like really good friends there, but there's just nothing. Once you get to a certain age there, there's not much you can do that you haven't done already. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to just like, grow up, have your kids, get that right job, start your family there, set your roots down. That's super common there, right? But yeah, some people want to like step outside that. They have other goals. So they, move to Toronto, move to Vancouver, move to Calgary, see the rest of the world.
And this is a path you chose.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, if I would have stayed in Winnipeg, I probably would have not gotten parole or just continued to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So coming out here to strengthen my family bond again was part of my my rehabilitation process. It was part of my correctional plan.
And do you think it was mostly family related, like and possibly the change, like in like where you're living that caused that, or is there other parts in Winnipeg that drew you into that lifestyle?
Well, when I came out here, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I've always been interested in business. And I had no idea what it was going to be like to like work a legitimate job again. Mm-hmm. Right. So, I had to like just, you have to follow conditions when you're on parole, right? And getting a legit job, showing my finances, showing that like I'm doing well was part of the plan. So, first job that I got was, it was flooring.
Flooring.
I did flooring with my dad on and off from the age of like 18, probably like 16 to like 20 or something like that. And I hated it.
Sure.
Hated it. And so this is the first job that I got when I came out here though, right? And I did it for one day and then I realized like, this isn't for me. Mm-hmm. So gave that up. And then the next job that I found was at Hell Pizza on Davie Street.
Okay. I've never been to Hell Pizza.
Oh my God. It's the best. It was the best pizza in the North Shore for 5 years.
Really?
But it wasn't big here. In New Zealand, it's like $40-45 million franchise.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
so it's a huge franchise.
Yeah, it's huge out there. Yeah. Yeah. So that was like my first job. And then, when we're talking earlier about like how like reflecting on like personal development and stuff, like, I had to, my first supervisor, I had to learn to like, take orders from someone, to have someone tell me what to do. That wasn't my lifestyle before, dude. It was me telling people what to do, but also me being told by like one other person what to do.
Yes.
So having to navigate through this, but also know that this is just part of my life now. Mm-hmm. So having to like swallow my pride and like realize the parts of like when I wanted to like react or I was upset about something because of the way that they spoke to me. It's like, it was a process for sure.
How did you wrestle through that? Like, I imagine that's something like if you're used to communicating a certain way and then you change that to the new way, that doesn't come just overnight easily.
No, I knew that it was part of like a bigger picture for me. So I really just had to like take it on the chin day by day. and work towards something that I thought was going to like just be part of my life moving forward. And that was working my way up to like supervisor. And then the owner offered me, and this is when I had to actually like start looking for a place for myself. So he offered me a basement suite in his home, which was like fully furnished. And he said I could manage his store in North Van. And I was like, hey, this is like, I'm being like rewarded now for all the hard work that I've done. Right. I'm like, I deserve this. So yeah, I took the opportunity and moved in, started managing the North Vancouver location. And even still, even having those like little achievements, I would still kind of get into my head a little bit being like, Andrew, you're making pizzas and you're like, it was like 30 years old or something like that. And I'm like, you're making pizzas. Like, where's this going? And I'm just finding myself comparing myself to like others and stuff like that. Right. But at the same time, I'm also like, Andrew, you also went to prison at the prime of your life. It was 24. 24. Yeah. And that's when they say you can do anything with your life at that age. And there I was throwing it away. Right. But then working at the pizza place, I'm like, I find myself just comparing myself to where everyone else is at. And the people that are training me are younger than me. So yeah, it was like it was kind of tough to navigate through, and it was a bit of a paradigm shift for sure. But once he offered me like ownership of one of the locations, that's when like I knew like, okay, so this is going to be like my life, like moving forward. And I was sadly mistaken. Yeah.
You mentioned that to me a little bit in the email you sent me. That is this the same guy who you thought was helping you, setting you up, and then he ended up being a scammer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what he did was he offered me ownership of his restaurant in North Van, and then a year later, over that course of time, he was slowly putting in like plans behind the scenes to make an exit from Canada, and like multi-level here. So first, he invited the guy one of the first 3 people who started Hell Pizza, brilliant guy, Warren Powell. He was one of the first 3 people that started Hell Pizza. He brought him to Canada and would partner with him, and said that Warren could get his PR by working for his company. But he came and he made an investment, and Steve ended up stealing that investment from Warren, but he didn't find out about it until a year later, and then ruined the relationship with the landlord so that I couldn't continue even after he left. And he also owned the rights to the name in Canada. So he left with his like $250,000 stolen, didn't pay payroll taxes, didn't pay GST. There's an account, there's a file with CRA where they're investigating. Like that's factual. So yeah, I got to this point in my life in July 2016 where we had to close the restaurant, and it was completely out of my control. I couldn't even like just reopen somewhere else.
Wow.
So
So what was that like? Like, you're trying to put your life back together, and then you're have this huge roadblock, right? Like life transitioning moment, or the path you're on, it's no longer a viable path. So what did you do from there?
There was so much anger and resentment towards him that I was trying to like also not forget, but a year before I took my teacher training. So I'm like trying to like apply all these like principles into my life and doing it like step by step, just with like staff members and customers and, life shit. But this was like paramount. And I'm like, this is like a lesson that is like far beyond any of my control that I just can't do anything about. How am I supposed to get through this? And, after getting over like a lot of the anger, and realizing that Warren had been screwed over even more than I was, I realized that I can do anything I want now. So I took a month off. I started to kind of regroup. the day after the restaurant closed, I taught my first yoga class.
Wow.
Yeah.
And had you been taking yoga prior?
Yeah. So I took my training in April 2015. I graduated in June 2015. And then in July, I took over ownership of the restaurant. And then a year later, got screwed out of the restaurant. And then the day after, the founder of Karma, he asked me, hey, can you sub my class? I know you're not working now.
So it's kind of those blessings in disguise moments, right? Like, or I don't say blessing in disguise, but more like an opportunity in every situation.
It was opportunity to surrender, to just start saying yes to things. And that's what I did.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was super interesting.
So when did you start getting into yoga?
First yoga class I ever took was in 2011 when I was in prison.
When you were in prison?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was taught by a good friend of mine named Mikey. He learned how to teach himself. He learned a lot of things while he was in there because he's had to spend a lot of time.
You said he taught himself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
From like reading books?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Guy's a wizard. So he taught me my first class. And then after that class, there's just like this vibe in my body that was like, I've never felt this before. And I just started getting more interested in it.
And that was your first time?
Yeah.
So your first class ever, you had that experience?
I never even heard of yoga before 2011. It was crazy. And now we have students taking the program that are like 17. And I'm like, holy fuck, where would I be right now if I knew about meditation or yoga when I was 17 years old?
Sure.
But it all played out the way it should.
Wow.
So that was the first class that I took. And but I didn't like continue taking it while I was in there. Didn't become like a regular thing, but the experience was something that like I'll never forget. And then when I got out and I had more free time on my hands, that's when I started to go in classes here and there.
Oh, okay.
And just kind of like dipping my toes back into the water and figuring it out.
And what made you decide to go for your teacher training?
Dolly Erical. Dolly told me. She actually made the suggestion for Mikey to take the training first, but he wasn't interested. And then she says, Andrew, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I said, I'm like, I don't want to be a yoga teacher. Like, the poses, when we were talking earlier about like just being like grateful for like good health and stuff like that, the poses, I don't want to sound like cocky, but like the poses were like my body fit into the poses well and easily, to the point where I could actually go like have a more introspective moment in them rather than thinking that I needed to make the pose look a certain way because it already did. Right. And so she said to me, she's like, you got to do this. You got to take this training. I'm like, why? She's like, it's just going to change your life. And her daughter took the training before. And she was also a teacher assistant in the training. So there was just so many like exercises and the people that you meet in there. And she wasn't wrong. Like it changed my life. Like I never really knew what it was like to just not be judged in a group of people at that time. Because being on parole wasn't something that like I wanted to be telling people.
Sure.
I wasn't comfortable telling everyone that like I'd been to jail because there were a couple of people that I did, and I noticed that they backed off from it because they felt like they didn't need someone that's been in prison in their life. So, taking the training and finding like some of like life's best friends. It was just so important to me in my life that, I knew that is something I was going to continue.
Wow. And what did you learn during your training?
I learned about forgiveness. I learned about unconditional love and non-judgment. Those are some of probably like the three biggest takeaways from the training. And in terms of forgiveness, I learned, that saying, how does it go? Forgive but not forget.
Yes.
Yeah. So my sister did some shitty things to me when I was like in jail. And then there's this moment in teacher training where they were talking about forgiveness. And, there's a time up until like I was on parole that like I had some anger towards my sister, but I had this epiphany in teacher training that I forgot about the stuff that she did. And I was just like, well, if it's not like pulling me down and there's no anger there anymore, then I might as well just like forgive. Maybe this is just forgiveness, because there wasn't any resentment towards her. And the other one was, the non-judgment was, on day one of training, like there's 28 people and we all go around the room sharing our stories. And after the first, second, third person, I'm like, Andrew, you're going to go up. You're going to go up. And 27 people later, I'm like, fuck, my story is nothing compared to like some of the stuff that people have just told me. But I went up, I shared, and it was just like water off a duck's back. Like nobody gave a shit. And I was just like, whoa, maybe it's not that big of a deal. I've just like created this story in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of made it a little easier to find some acceptance.
I've had that experience too in my life of when you're afraid to talk about what you've gone through or your mindset or your personal experiences, like or who you are, like if you're ashamed of who you are. But when you accept it and you just share it freely, it's like a burden that's released. And I think it also intensifies and it enhances your relationship with people, right? Like if you have a serious conversation with somebody and you like tell them your perspective or story without holding back anything, it really grows that relationship and it grows trust in people. And you as a person grow too.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. There's like a being vulnerable like to one another. There's I don't mean like power in the sense of like power over someone. I mean like there's an energy to it because like when two people have been like vulnerable and shared, it's like you just see each other through like a new lens of without judgment. It's just kind of curbed because you've both shown a lot of strength to get this out. It's like shedding skin.
I think so. I think that's a great way to put it. Shedding skin.
Yeah.
Describe for me the events that led you to prison.
When my mom, so we'll go to the beginning. When my mom, I forgot to bring the picture.
Of your mom?
No, of my mom's wedding when she remarried.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm in the photo like cringing because I'm like, my mom's remarrying someone that I don't approve of, right? And so growing up, I never looked to my dad for any kind of lessons. And now I know that like I was looking to like all the wrong people for the lessons, right? So when I had a lot of freedom in high school and growing up on like movies and in high school and crowds and all that kind of stuff, right? I remember just like wanting to be like a drug dealer, and what I liked about it was that I didn't look like a typical drug dealer like at school or the ones that we see in like movies and stuff like that, right? And so like I was like addicted to this ability to get away with things and not be suspected of it,
So like that was actually a goal of yours was to be a drug dealer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. And I would like seek out like my own sources from like people that I like felt like were actual like gangsters. Right. And yeah, I mean, the first person that, I started picking up drugs off of, he's passed away now. So dealing drugs in high school, and then I stayed in Winnipeg up until the age of 19 or 20, and then moved out here and lived with my parents for a bit. But I wasn't happy living with them. So then I met a guy named Beckham. He was like the president of the gang that I was in. I remember reading about him and his brother in the newspapers when I was a teenager. And I was like, read these stories about them. And I was just like, fantasizing about these two, like, they're these two Albanian brothers. And they're just like, I hear stories about them, just like how fucking crazy they are, right? And I remember just like always wanting to like be part of that team. And I was introduced to him out here. He just got out on parole. And he took me in under his wing. And I ended up like moving in with him. And he started like, telling me like things to do and just really like grooming me basically, right? And it was at a time in my life where I was just like, I remember being so easily influenced by others, right? And so acting like him and saying things that he says and trying to like be like him is like almost like mimicking someone else's behavior, right? Because growing up, it's just like I wasn't learning anything from my dad, so I'm like trying to like create this own identity for myself, right? And then just getting it from all the wrong places. And there's just like so much shit that like I'm not like proud of from back then, but like that was basically the person who started to show me how to like buy and sell drugs and weapons and
Wow.
Yeah. But he was murdered too in 2007, and every year since high school lost a friend, drugs, overdose, murder, suicide, and so living that life, it had its like at the time it feels like it has its like positives, but by the age of 22, there's a police investigation on me, and this is all on Google, so it's like it's nothing new. But there's a police investigation on me and Beckham, and
were you aware of it at the time?
Oh my God! So this is such a trip. So the things that you get to read through your disclosure after you've been charged, right? You get to see like all the things that led up to the police like pulling you over this one time, or that time when I remember coming home and seeing a car pull out, and then I go into my house and realizing that was the cops going into my house planting bugs. Yeah, and you start to tie in all of these things, and they actually have to give you written warnings after they've tapped your phone within like a certain amount of days, right? But they were very strategic about it. So back then I was going by my stepdad's last name, Coffin. And so I didn't have any ID that said Coffin though. So they would send the notice to me, to Andrew Coffin, and it would end up at the post office. But I couldn't collect it from the post office because I didn't have ID that said Coffin. My biological last name is Fredericks. I go by Fredericks now because you can Google Andrew Coffin Winnipeg and the article just comes up right there. So for reasons for employment, I started to go by my biological last name. And because I knew that like having to get a legit job and change my life was paramount. But I don't really know if I answered your question.
No, I think you did. So you're learning how to become a successful drug dealer. I don't want to say successful as like it's positive, but you're learning the ways of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then how did what events led you to being convicted?
So in January 2008, I got pulled over and had a firearm in the car, and then once I got my charges, I took them to my lawyer, and it was basically you're charged with possession of a firearm, trafficking a firearm, operating a motor vehicle with a firearm, and careless storage of a firearm. And then it says in another section, we could come back and charge you for trafficking coke ×2, money laundering, and a bunch of other charges. And so my lawyer says, there's definitely an investigation going on you, because what they say here is that they could come back and charge you. It means that they're doing some research. And I don't know, have you ever watched The Wire?
The Wire? No, I don't think so.
So there's so many stages that cops have to go through to start gathering their intel and building their case against you. And some of those are just like street stops, information from rats, before they can go to a judge and say, we want to tap his phone, we want to put cameras in their house, we want to put tracking devices in the car. So they have to go through these stages of exhaustion before they can get all that. But they got all that. And Danny Gunn, lawyer, he's like, this is pretty much like $1 million investigation. And I'm not saying that to sound extreme. It costs, where that money goes, it's paying the wages of the cops, the overtime, the equipment is expensive as hell, and the experienced technicians that they hire to be able to break into your car when it's outside your house without the alarm going off, and putting a GPS tracking device in it, and going into your house, finding an item just like this and getting the exact replica, but putting a bug in it and then bring it back in your house.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
expensive.
Exactly, right? So it all adds up. And so then I'm on bail for, oh my God, like a year and a half. And while I was on bail, I got caught in a second project where I sold some drugs to an undercover agent. And so that's how I got pinned in both of them. And then in November 2009, I remember saying to my girlfriend at the time that I gotta turn myself in. Like, I've been on the run for a while, and
so they were trying to hunt you down, and like there was a warrant for your arrest.
Yeah. So there was So I'm skipping here. So when I was on bail, I paid surety to. You have to pay fee to the courts in order to be able to travel. I had a job with a travel agency down in Mexico, and they needed me to go down and work with them. So I went down to Mexico, had to pay a surety, and like a couple days after I left, my door gets kicked in, and they searched my house, and the warrant was for weed. So somebody ratted me out saying that I was selling weed and I had it at my house, but I didn't actually have any weed at my house. And then when I got back, I wasn't allowed to go home because they had a no contact order between my landlord and me. So from that point on, I was basically, I had to find a home and to live with. So I was staying with one of my buddies, and
in Canada or Mexico?
In Winnipeg. Yeah, when I came back to Winnipeg, yeah. And so I was like on the run for a while and hiding out. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. The fucking stress, dude. Oh my God. I remember just thinking so much like wild stuff, like because of all of the lengths that the cops had gone through to get their information before. Now being on the run, I feel like it's just amplified even more.
And so you're like paranoid, like who's watching me? Am I interacting? Like showing your face around, like all this stuff. So
paranoid. I used to drink a lot. Slipped into like some addictions. But it got to a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was really lucky to have an amazing partner at that time. She had nothing to do with like the drug dealing. She had no interest in it, no interest in my money or anything like that. She just saw me and saw like a different side of me, right? It was,
wow.
Yeah, it was like one of my true loves. And I was like, if I want to, have a life with this person who deserves it, I'm going to do something about it. So I woke her up in the middle of the night, just finished crushing a bunch of rounds of Call of Duty. And then I woke her up and said, hey, it's time. I'm going to go and turn myself in. She has to take sleeping pills because she has restless leg syndrome. So when she woke up in the middle of the night, she was like super loopy, not really sure what's going on. And then, I jump in a cab, I crack a beer, And I drink my last beer on the way down to the police station, and turn myself in, and having to wait in a cell for so long, sucked.
Were they surprised? Like, what was the reaction? Like you turn yourself in. I imagine that's not a common experience. Like,
So because they already have me on video with their undercover cop, they were fucking grilling me, wanting to know, where do you live? Where do you live? Because a week and a half later, they execute their project and raid I think I'd probably get the number wrong, but you can look up Project Divide. They raided like so many people's homes. And so they wanted to know where I lived so that they could raid my home. Because about a week and a half after I turned myself in and I'm in jail, I get called out, and I get called down to, so I'm in Headingley, the provincial jail. And then they call me out, and then they drive me down to the remand where they, organized crime unit, where they charge me again for the project that I got caught in.
wow.
While I was on bail. Yeah. So that's why they wanted to know where I lived.
So they could raid your house.
Yeah. Again. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, what kind of led you to thinking of that transition? Like, what, my life isn't working out like I want.
A guy like me isn't going to be able to go back into that life and like reign supreme. Okay. Like, I'm not a big person, and my friends always used to try getting me to take steroids and shit. Right. But like, I'm not going to grow up to be like some successful gangster, you know.
Yeah.
That's just not me. I knew like who I actually was. Like, being with Carrie, my girlfriend at the time, being around her reminded me of like who I was. And she saw the kind of person that I was. And that slowly started to kind of take me away from that life that I thought was right for me. And, but she wasn't even like encouraging of it anyway. It was just kind of like a byproduct of just like our love. Right.
Yeah.
So I knew that like I wasn't going to like get out and like rejoin a gang and do the same shit again, because you know what? Getting 7 years for what I did next time is double digits.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm not, that's it. That's it. Like, yeah. So yeah, it's not worth the stress. It wasn't worth the impacts on my health. Yeah.
So when you went to prison, you went in with the mindset of, I have to change myself.
When I went in, I wasn't exactly sure how, but I knew that well, I didn't know what jail was going to be like, first of all. And when I went in, I went to the range where my roommate from on the street, RO'd, was in that range. So I knew that like for the first year that we were going to be around each other. And still be just like we were on the street. So at that point, I wasn't really sure. I knew that I was going to change my life in some way. Maybe I was just like lying to myself, saying that like when I get out, I'll go legit, but I'll have something on the side. But no, that never happened.
It never happened.
No, it's way too fucking paranoid. And I think like the harm that was being caused, not just to me, but to others, was not worth it. Yeah. Because I'm also just like lucky to be alive. Like 5 of like my old gang members are dead. And like probably like 9 friends as well. So.
And how did they die?
You want me to go in order?
Sure. Like whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, in grade 10, it was John Seiko, who died from a car accident. Grade 11, it was Chris Smart, who suicide. Grade 12, it was Morgan Trudeau, his good friend. He got hit in the back of the head with a bat and broke his brainstem. Year after that, it was Philip, who got caught by a stray bullet. A year after that, it was Adam Robertson from addiction. Year after that, it was I think it was Chad Davis. That was one of the most gruesome fucking murders that I've ever heard of. And then it was Beckham got murdered, and then Bruce Oak from Addiction. And over the last couple of years, it's been my old friend Rudy, heart failure, Dan Skakem from Addiction, Tyrone from Addiction or Overdose, I think, and I think that's it.
When you're in this lifestyle and you're seeing your friends get murdered and die from overdose, and like what's going through your mind? Like you're on this track of this lifestyle, but like I imagine for a while you continue like so like what's going on in your brain like when these things are happening?
Well, at that young age, I never felt like my life was in jeopardy. I never felt unsafe. My roommate at the time was very respectable and very dangerous, and he looked after me all the time. So I never felt unsafe when I was with him. And whenever I went out, I had another friend that was this other massive dude. Nobody would like mess with me when these people were around. So basically just being able to survive by reputation, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But like you never had the thoughts like, oh, like if this happens to these people, like this is where the lifestyle leads to? Like you never had that thought process?
Yeah, I knew that if I did keep going, it wouldn't end.
Was that something that developed later, like towards when you were turning yourself in, or was that like did you always feel that? Or
so I got into 2 fights when I was in jail, and when I got beat up, that's when it kind of clicked in that like, hey, like, yeah, sometimes people won't touch me or mess with me when I'm on the street, but when I'm in jail and I'm by myself, who's got my back? I gotta stick up for myself, and I'm not a good fighter. So I know that like, and I'm also not a violent person, because I remember being in the fight. I've seen people fight and they have like this like rage and this anger where they just don't care what it's like something checks out, and they just see black, and they're just wanting to inflict pain on people, and I'm not about that.
So you never had that experience, like even in your fight, like you didn't see black, you didn't know? Okay.
No, I didn't.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was prison like?
Well, the first year was provincial, and I had like one of my best friends around. So
you mean provincial, like for the uneducated of like the prison structure? What does that mean?
Yeah. So when you go into provincial, there's like in Winnipeg, there's a remand center and there's a Headingley jail. These are provincial jails. And anything less than 2 years of a sentence, that's where you serve your sentence. Or if you're waiting charges to be convicted, that's where you're staying.
Okay.
So I was there from November 9th, 2009 until December 7th or something, 2010. And then I pled guilty and I got 7 years and went to Stony Mountain. And then in Stony Mountain, you sit in intake with like 60 other people until they decide where they're going to put you in jail. Because at that point, Stony Mountain is like I don't know what it's like anymore, but at the time, it was really heavily like gang run. Like they would have their own ranges and
ranges,
like cell blocks.
Okay, cell blocks. Okay.
Yeah. And so I was in intake, and that's where the fights happened, and then I ended up in segregation, and for about 3 months, and then
segregation.
The whole
isolation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the guard there were basically saying like, why the fuck would anyone beat you up? Like you're tiny. Like, it's just not even fair. The guy who beat me up, we even sat down before and he told me, I don't want to do this. I have to do this because my dad is friends with the people who put the hit on you. So he beat me up, and then he went out to Gen Pop, and there's this guy who used to be in my old gang who broke his fucking arm for what he did, saying you like to beat up on little guys and beat the shit out of them. So there's like retribution for that, but I didn't ask for that, you know? But after I'd gone to segregation, that's when I kind of realized, and after my girlfriend broke up with me at the time, that's when I realized, I'm like, hey, life is changing now. Like, once you kind of end up in that situation, you get like a reputation in there that's not good. Like, you know, but like I stayed, I fought, but I knew that if it would happen again, so I left. And if you leave, you're basically like a bitch.
You leave what?
The range.
The range.
Yeah.
In isolation.
Yeah.
So you requested this?
Yeah.
Okay. And how long were you in isolation for?
3 months.
3 months. And then what happened?
And then when that guard said to me, you know, like, you're not a violent person, I don't know why this happened to you. That's when they gave me minimum, and they put me in Rockwood.
Which is a different prison?
Yeah, it's actually outside the building. So you live in a house with like people, you cook your own meals. It's basically like that step for them to learn to like reintegrate you into society.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's medium, minimum, and max levels.
Okay.
So once you get down to a minimum level, you go to a different institution.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I went to Rockwood, and then put in a transfer to ship out to BC here, and then ended up in Ferndale.
And you put in that transfer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing that you could do that.
Yeah, like CSC wants you to build...
CSC?
Yeah, Correctional Services of Canada.
Uh-huh.
They want you to have support when you get out.
Okay.
And my family was out here at the time. Yeah.
This seems more like they're focused on you trying to escape the lifestyle, like that they're trying to help you. Like, is that true, or?
That's their job.
Yeah.
It's not easy. And they do have programs and stuff for people to take, but like, they're kind of a joke.
How so?
Well, when you commit some of these crimes, they want to know what you did them for, right? Mm-hmm. So some people will say like, you know, yeah, I sold drugs to feed my addiction, or I was committing theft to sell shit to make money, right? Or I was violent because I have anger issues. Mm-hmm. So that means that you have to take a program for like anger management, or if you were doing it for addiction, you have to take an addiction program. Mine was straight up out of greed. I didn't have addiction problems. So there wasn't any suggested programming for me. So I had to seek out things to work on, to like have programs under my belt to show that I'm developing, even though things weren't recommended for me.
I see.
So I had to take the initiative for sure. And I know I did. I think I did good.
Well, you're out.
Yeah. And, you get... you have to have like the right parole officer, the one that's actually interested in helping you out, because often enough, it's literally just a power game. Sometimes there's a parole officer who just wants to flex on you and be able to tell you what to do, you know.
And you were lucky that you got a good one?
Yeah. And I met someone in there that kind of like taught me how to earn my parole. Yeah. I kind of really owe it to him.
So like what things did you have to do to earn parole?
Stay out of trouble. Yeah, stay out of trouble. And do proactive things. Apply for unescorted temporary absences. So what that means, there's temporary absences where you can like leave the jail with an approved volunteer and like do work or something. And then there's unescorted ones where like my dad came to pick me up, and then I was able to go to their house for like 96 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And you get a taste of what life is like without being in jail.
And then you go back.
Yeah. And then that's now on like your file that like you've successfully completed a UTA. And then that's supposed to be like a check mark when you're going for your parole hearing.
Wow. I didn't know that existed. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that exists in the States or not. I know the system is very different. It seems more harsh from the what I've seen on the documentaries, and that's all my only experience.
I think in the States it's just called work release.
Work release.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where you can actually like have a job and you get to like leave. You can do that in Canada too, but I think in the States, yeah, it's called work release.
Okay.
Yeah, but you probably have to get to a certain level, like minimum.
And you have to. It sounds like prove yourself in a variety of ways before they'll let that happen.
Yeah. No violence, no like drugs. Yeah, just basically no institutional charges.
Are those things like the what did you call it? The temporary absence?
Yeah.
Is that for all crimes or like nonviolent crimes or?
I think that if you have certain charges, you might not even be eligible.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. You'd have to like check. You could just like look this up, but like I think it's like anyone that has violent offenses or like sexual related offenses, they're not eligible for temporary absences, I don't think. Yeah. But other ones, yeah, you can get like TAs to go to like NA meetings or AA meetings.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What role did your family play in helping you overcome your being institutionalized, like your lifestyle? Like you said that you got to go, temporary absence.
Mhm.
What was like the conversations like, or like even before, like when you're going through like the process, like how, like, were they trying to help you, guide you? Were they angry? Like this, like how was that?
They were never angry. They knew that like if they were angry, then it just kind of pushes me further away. And they also just knew that like I'm gonna do whatever I want to do at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, my mom would always, share her opinion on what she thinks I should do, and she would always express like some degree of worry and stress for me. And yeah, my dad would always be there to kind of like back her up for sure. But yeah, they wanted me to be close. I even tried living over there with them for a little bit, but I couldn't do it. But yeah, they always just kind of like supported like my choices with like the pizza place and with yoga and karma teachers, and yeah.
Wow. And moving forward a little bit, so let's go back to, you taught your first yoga class.
Mhm.
Then what happened?
And then I just kept teaching.
You kept teaching.
Yeah, once a week, then 3 times a week, and the first time was super nervous. So then started to get the hang of it, and so just started putting together like playlists. And all I would teach is yin. I just loved yin, and it was seeing how much people were like benefiting it and enjoying it helped me also feel like I was able to kind of give something back and do something good, because I just spent so many years just doing bad shit that it was time to start tipping the scales.
And what goals do you have like with your life from here on out?
Well, teaching is always going to be like a part of it for sure. And I've started to acquire more certification for got my 500 hour and my trauma responsive training. So it seems like teacher training is still in the cards for me.
Teacher training or doing it, or
teacher training.
Okay.
Yeah. So that seems to be like happening by itself, and I'm not giving like a whole lot of like energy to it. It's happening. So that's going to be like always something that I'm working on. My part-time job at Tality is important to me too. But I really want to be having more time for myself to just like focus on my health and take care. Because it's been a struggle since like October. My doctor told me that I have he assessed me, and I have like fibromyalgia.
I've heard this. Describe more about it.
Yeah, so the pain is just like so random, and the fatigue is like unbearable sometimes. It's and after doing more research on it, I felt like, okay, well, mine doesn't seem to be like that bad when I read about how other people's and how they're basically like just suffering in their life because of it. So I try not to like give into it too much and really like not let it take over my life. But there's also a part of me where I have to be like face reality and be like, hey, this is like very real. Like today is a difficult day to like actually go to work and be on my feet all day. So yeah, dealing with like the mental weight of that has been had to adapt to that. But so like long term, probably like teacher training and traveling and podcasting.
Traveling. Where do you like to travel to?
I just I have a pardon in the process. So
A pardon? Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I can't go to the States.
Oh, because of
the charges. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which would also limit me from like some other countries as well too. So I need to get that first, and then it also opens up the door for like employment as well too. But I need to get that completed first before I can like make a choice of where I want to go.
It's difficult. It limits your work on what the jobs you can have.
Yeah.
With your charges.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, Canada just reduced the fee for pardons, and the pardon application is now much cheaper, but they're saying that it is focused towards helping people get better employment. Not necessarily focused on letting them like travel and go to places, right? But it's something that I got to get under my belt, and then see what kind of doors open up for me.
Do you think it's good or bad, or that to limit someone like you went to prison, you did your crimes, you paid for your crimes, right? That when you get out, that you're limited on the types of jobs that you can have.
Yeah, I mean, so many people just like end up in construction because it's easy, and I won't say easy, it's fucking hard, but because it's something that construction companies will like just take people on. But getting any kind of like office job or corporate job, or becoming some kind of like having some kind of like a title, like that's not easily available for anybody with a record. So yeah, it's tough. It's not easy. Yeah.
Do you agree that it's not easy, or do you think that's something that should be re-looked at?
There's definitely like some things that could be implemented. Like I think once people have, they have, once you've had good behavior for X amount of years, then you can submit like your application to get the pardon. But I mean, with jobs, like on applications, they ask you like if you have criminal record, which they're actually not allowed to do from what I hear. But then also if you lie about it and they do a check on you, then like you're screwed. And so that's, I remember during the pandemic, all I wanted to do was I wanted to just drive for Uber, skip the dishes, and just like do deliveries and stuff. But I couldn't because I had a record and they did a check on me. So it's like even one of like the most simplest basic jobs. Like
for sure.
Yeah, I was kind of angry about that one.
Yeah, I agree on that. Particularly, I think if you want people to participate in society, right, that you shouldn't limit their employment options. However, I understand, like, if you've committed financial crimes, maybe you shouldn't work at a financial company.
Yeah,
you know,
where you
like,
have access to people's
yeah,
personal information. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
100%.
Like, I understand certain things, but like for a company to say I can't hire you because you have a criminal record, it doesn't sound like that you've paid your penance.
Yeah, you know what? The guy from when I told my old employer at the pizza place that I had a record,
Mhm.
his response was, "Well, it sounds like you've got a lot to lose." And I was like, "Yeah, I do," but like that should have been like the first signal,
You
you
have a
know?
lot to lose. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So like I think that was like where he like started to learn to like take advantage of the situation because he
Ah,
knew that I would always want to perform well and that I
I
won't
see.
fuck up. Otherwise,
Yes.
I have a lot to lose, right? Um, so I mean, I think it's hard to say like, yeah, on a case by case basis, people
Yeah.
can find the right jobs. But I mean, we were talking earlier about people like, being more expressive and encouraging themselves to like find their passions and go towards that. I think like that's something um, that people should start working towards because I mean we're in a day and age where you can do anything these days.
Mhm.
So I mean, yeah, I mean there's a lot of good artists. Some of the best art that I've ever seen in my life was from people that were in prison. So there are ways that people could be making a living out of that.
I think it like people who've gone through hardships in their life, whether it's self-inflicted or external, uh, they're people who have a lot of passion, who often are high performers, or like they want to change their life, or they have something to share, right? Like they have a deep uh, some emotions or some baggage or some something that they're trying to like share or do, if you know what I'm trying to say. For sure.
Yeah, it comes out some way. And yeah, like through some of the art that I've seen, it was like that expression that this is their way of getting things out and getting it onto canvas. And it's just like moving that energy and getting it out and slowly working through it. But yeah, because they have a story to tell, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people aren't comfortable talking about it, and some people are.
You talked briefly with me at one point of you used to be ashamed of talking about your story.
Mhm.
What changed?
Um, I guess like there's just like a judgment piece to it. Yeah, I guess there's just like a judgment part to it where I was kind of like worried about like what people will think, what they will say. Um, because I mean, I've met people that have like struggled with addictions, and then I came to realize that like, oh, yeah, one of my friends who died from addictions, yeah, I was a role in doing drugs with him when we were younger,
Mm-hmm.
and there's yeah, having a hand in that like made me feel some guilt later on as well too. So yeah, there's just shit I'm not proud of.
How did you work through that? Like, I understand that you're not proud of it,
Mhm.
but how did you overcome of the shame?
I don't know. At the time when I was younger, the mentality was like, oh, if they're gonna do it, they're gonna get it from somewhere. Might as well be me, right? And then realizing that, hey, that line or that, whatever it is, that pill could have been the one that got them hooked. It's like I didn't need to do that. I didn't need to be a part of that. So I think just being really clear on never taking part in those things again and being mindful of like my actions and everything that I do moving forward. But even still, that's an art, because like we're not perfect. We're always going to be making mistakes.
No,
but just not to that degree anymore.
I think that's something that people should like definitely be aware of. Like everyone makes mistakes. We all mess up. I know I've like there's things I've done in my life I'm not proud of, right? And sometimes you may have intentionally done things or even unintentionally do things, right? So like some of the things that you like for me, like there's situations where you unintentionally do something, and that's like horrible feeling, right?
Yeah.
But accepting your mistakes, moving on from your mistakes, that's a skill. And people shouldn't be afraid to admit they've made mistakes, because we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
If we don't admit our mistakes or talk about them, then how can you become a better person? How can you move on?
I can only speak for me, but like I couldn't, because I would always get like self-critical about it if I wasn't, if there's mistakes that I've made, but I didn't know exactly how like I hurt someone or they haven't told me, then I don't know how to fix something. I don't know like the specifics of it, but it's like there needs to be like a line of communication where two people can kind of come together to talk about it, so that someone knows how to correct themselves, to grow from that. Otherwise, we face the potential of doing it again, right?
Sure,
you know?
Absolutely.
Or be living in this like constant anxiety of like being too afraid to be confident and too afraid to be ourselves because we're worried about how someone else will perceive it or take things. That's how it was for me for a while.
How did you grow your confidence?
Good friends, good hype men. Reconnecting with someone that I hadn't spoken to in 10 years. And then they just kind of reminded me of, hey, this is something that I liked most about you. You were confident. You were just so on point. And I'm like, yeah, but I was a different person back then. And then they were like, it doesn't matter. Like, whatever you're doing, you're owning it. And you did it best. And you had this like confidence that that they'll never forget. And I'm like, but I'm still not seeing how that unfolds today. And they're like, you need to figure that out, because without it, you're, she could see that I was like lost because I haven't had that confidence in a while. So sometimes I'm just really winging it to see how things work. And then sometimes there's moments where like I can speak with conviction, or I can like act out in confidence and have it be very like potent and fruitful.
And you kind of briefly mentioned it there, that you alluded to it, that confidence can change through a person's life, right? Like, and it's important to be aware of your confidence, and to realize that you have the capacity to change that, right? It's not easy, right? Even if you're a high state of confidence, it's important to realize that if you don't do certain things, that you can either drift, and have less confidence, or you can maintain you can grow your confidence, for sure. Like, and I think that's something important for like particularly like young men to understand, like as they're growing up, especially if you don't have a strong like father figure in your life. That's something difficult to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise like the flame just can die, right? But I think also finding the things that like you're really good at and owning those things and working on them, and knowing the things that we're not maybe just the best at and we can improve on.
Sure.
But there's also some people that are experts for those particular skills or whatever, right? But yeah, it's like we can get good at so many things. We just need to be putting in the work for it and humble ourselves from time to time without coming across as egotistical like narcissist who's just like good at everything, because that's just not real.
No, the opposite's true of having too much confidence.
Yeah.
Right? Like overly confident.
Yeah, really arrogant.
Yes, arrogance. I think that's a good way to put it, right?
Yeah.
For sure. If folks were listening and they heard stuff in the background, that's Mika, my dog, roaming around. She gives me a lot of love. You know, I've had her for 10 years, and our relationship just grows over time.
Yeah, this is your roomie. This is your comfort right here, right?
Yes, absolutely. Do you have any pets?
No, my landlord won't let me have any pets.
Oh.
Yeah. I wish I did.
What would you get?
I would probably get a puppy.
A dog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, I think it gives you something to like work for, right? Like if you don't have children or, you know, like a relationship at the time, like it gives you something like to like raise, and like you can teach them, right?
Yeah. You leave the house for 5 minutes and you come back, and it's like you've been gone for 5 years. Like they just miss you.
She misses me so much. Like when I leave, like her face just kind of goes down, and she's like,
yeah,
you know, like she gets sad.
Yeah. I used to have a dog, and when my roommate went away for like a month and then came back, the dog like held a little bit of like anger that he left.
Yeah.
And like wouldn't go near him for a little while to show that, hey, you left me for a month. I'm not going to just come over there and let you pet me. There's personality in dogs, I think.
She does the same, actually. So, for instance, if I don't spend a lot of time with her, like if I'm working, like if it's a work day and I work 8 hours and I'm not giving her quality time, or if I leave the house and then I come back, you know, for like to like yoga or like buying groceries, or like if I leave her alone, or don't just give her attention. I notice this because when we go in bed, she'll only want to sit between my legs, which isn't comfortable for me. But if I wait,
because you're a side sleeper.
Because I'm a side sleeper. Yes. But if I wait like a half hour or so, then her like anger like kind of subsides, and then she'll let me pick her up and bring her towards my chest, right? And I can tell how much attention I've given her based on if she immediately lets me pull her to my side and sleep like this, then I know I've given her a lot of attention that day.
Oh.
Otherwise, I'm like, and so it's kind of a good, like, sometimes I struggle with consistency in my life, just in general, right? Like, I spend this much at work, this much with friends, this much with a dog, this much with a girlfriend, you know, like all those things. For me, I find the balance the most challenging. And she's a good gauge for my balance.
Like, give me an example.
I'm a person that I tend to focus on one thing really well, right? So like I can do my computer job extremely well, or I can focus a lot on a relationship, you know, or a group of friends, or, you know, whatever. But balancing those all together, right? Like having a good relationship with a job and a dog and friends, that's challenging. Keeping the house clean with that too, right? That balance is difficult for me.
Yeah, you and me both, and I didn't have it. dog or a girlfriend. Imagine what it's like being parents with kids.
I know.
Jeez.
That's
an art.
Yes. My friend Stan, he said that he had a child this year, and he said he now feels this pulling, like where he's being pulled between his job and between his family, like his son, right? Because it's different when it's just a wife and a husband and a job. It's a different pull than when you have a child, right? Because they all need attention.
Yeah. Like when the child's, it's a very maternal period when they're just born, right? The father comes in like a few years later, but yeah, it's the mother duties for the first, can't remember how many. And it's like so demanding of their attention. But yeah, later on when the father role needs to come in, it's like, it's a switch that gets flipped. Sure. Yeah.
I know some of the best memories I have are with my dad growing up.
Oh.
Yeah.
What age?
Oh, probably between that, like 5 years, 6 years to like 10, 11, 12, like 10 to around 14, I'd say.
Dude, those are the best years.
Yeah.
You can remember those?
I briefly, I remember some stories, one of my dad's favorite stories of me was, I forgot my keys one day. And so I tried to open the window in the basement to get in. But when I did so, the whole window, including the frame, it fell out. just fell. And it was like one of those like box windows, like this high, it was like one of those windows. So I was nervous. I didn't tell anybody, right? Like I just, I forget exactly what I did, but like I just moved on. And then, so my dad is mowing the lawn, and then he sees that the window is just like broken, right? And so his first reaction is one of the kids did this, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he lines us all up, and this is what he says. He's like, "Who broke the window?" No one says a word. And he says, "Well, if no one here broke the window, then I have to call the police. And I have to get them to do fingerprints because someone tried to break in. So unless one of you broke the window, I have to call the police." So then I raised my hand, and I'm like, "Yes, Dad, it was me." And then he's like, "Son, what happened?" So like I was probably like 10, 11 years old. And I was like, "Well, Dad, I was just gazing at the window and it fell in."
Like you made it happen.
Yeah, I made it happen. And he thought that was hysterical because like for a 10-year-old to use the word gazing, like I was just gazing out the window.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
It's one of those windows that like falls in with like the chains that
it was a window with like a metal frame, and it had just gotten like probably like the house had settled a little bit, and it just wasn't in there sturdy. So like I was pushing on the window to open the door because it was a door that opened this way. So I was pushing in, and the whole frame just fell in and shattered.
I wonder why you didn't tell him.
Because I'm growing up, I was nervous. I didn't have that confidence, that kind of thing. So I didn't tell him. Yeah. And that's what he was struck. And then his next question was, "Well, how long has the window been broken?" I was like, "Well, about a week." And he's like, "What?"
It's interesting how like when we're young, like we'll just lie.
Yeah.
Because like we're like scared of the consequences.
Yes.
And stuff,
for sure.
Right? Yeah, that's a good one.
Another funny story. I was riding the car with my dad, and we used to have this big like water bowl for our dog. It's probably smaller than I'm thinking, but because as a kid everything's big, right? But it was like this big like water bowl, and we're driving down the road, and I see up ahead that there's a guy, and he's trimming his bushes right at the edge of the lawn. And so I look at my dad and I'm like, Dad, can I take this water bowl and throw it on this guy? My dad thinks I'm joking. He's like, sure, son. Like, I don't care. Like, you can throw the water on the guy. So we're driving past. I take the water and throw it on the dude, right? And so the guy is, like, and he gets so mad, he starts running towards the van.
Oh.
He starts running, and like there's a stop sign, and there's like 5 cars.
He's a hero.
and I'm just looking in the rear view mirror. I'm just watching the guy get closer and closer, and I'm starting to sweat. I'm starting to, like he's like, "What did you do?" It's like, "I'm kidding,"
It's one of those moments where you like hit the lock button and
lock button. And luckily we were able to make that left-hand turn before the guy came.
Oh.
And I feel like now I feel like I feel bad for that, but at the time, after that moment of impending doom went away, we were just belly laughing, because my dad really couldn't say much, right? Because I asked.
He gave you the green light.
He gave me the green light. Yes,
it's on him.
Yes.
Pretty much.
He thought I was joking. He's like, what person's gonna throw water?
How old were you for that one?
Oh, I was probably that 10 age, or so.
Invincible.
Yeah, those were the days. My dad, he lived about a half hour from me.
Mm-hmm.
And he would drive a half hour just to see me anytime he could, because for a long time he was only allowed to see me every other weekend,
mm-hmm.
right? And when the rules became more lax, when my mom and them kind of worked some things out and he could see me more often,
mm-hmm.
he would. I would call him, Dad, I need you to be here. And it wouldn't matter. He would drive, and he didn't care. He never complained. From him, he was happy to do that.
Yeah. Shared custody, eh?
Yeah. It was shared. So my dad or my mom had primary custody.
Yeah.
So she had me all week and then one weekend out of every 2.
And tell me something. When you were changing homes to visit back and forth.
Yes.
Did you find your sense of I know at that age we didn't really know the words safety, security,
mm-hmm.
grounded.
Yeah.
But if you could reflect on it, do you think that did it affect you going from home to home?
For sure.
Did one make you feel more welcoming or safer than the other one?
So I would definitely say I felt more excited to see my father. Probably because one, you're not spending as much time with him, right? Because if you only see one parent, if you have 2 parents and you see one parent less, you probably get excited to see the other parent more, right?
Yeah, it's an event.
It's an event.
Events are everything at that age.
Yeah, 100%.
We only get so many birthday parties to go to.
Yes, for sure. And I also think part of it is my father was lucky enough that he was able to work from home a lot.
Oh, okay.
Even in think this was in the 90s, right? So think for a man who had a sales job, who was able to work from home, how unique that was in the 90s.
Pioneer.
He was a pioneer. He had the laptop and he used to have one of those Zach Morris, telephones.
Oh yeah, the brick phones.
Yeah, he had one of those brick phones. So
the 3-foot antenna.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
So it was less chaotic with him because he had a more stable situation. Versus the situation with my mom is she was working 1 or 2 jobs. Mm-hmm. She was going to school at one point too, right? Because she has 3 master's degrees.
Wow.
3 master's degrees. Life was more chaotic, I'd say, with growing up with her, just because there might not be a parent always around, right? Like we spend a lot of time, and did you ever heard of latchkey or like
Latchkey sounds familiar.
It was a school program like where before school, so my mom had to go to work, like early, right? Well, that means she can't wait for our school to start. So she would get up extra early, drop us maybe like 6, 7 in the morning to a program that would like watch you. And then from there, they would take you to school. And then from there, she couldn't be home yet because she's still working, right? So then we'd go back to there. And then she might get home like 6 or 7,
Wow.
and then we would be home, and then she would make dinner, and then we would do that all again, right?
Wow.
And if it wasn't latchkey, it was like a babysitter, right? So we didn't have someone. It was a little more chaotic in that scenario, if that makes sense.
And it's like at that age, learning routines is like not part of our. It's like we shouldn't be. I mean, I shouldn't say shouldn't, but like learning to follow a routine at that age is like we're just kids. Like we're supposed to just be like enjoying ourselves, and then living our best lives and stuff. But yeah, when parents aren't together, it makes things difficult.
For sure, and I don't blame either one of them, right? Like it was a situation that like we were in, and it was unfortunate that for a big part of that life that we are in that like what I would imagine what hurt my dad a lot is like he probably knew like that was going on, right? Like I don't think he knew that we weren't a babysitters, a latchkey, right? Like, but the fact that he wasn't able as a father when he worked from home to be able to be there,
Wow. And I mean, it sounds like what they did was worked out.
Yes.
Of course. So they still put you first.
100%.
Yeah.
That's one thing about my parents that I'll say is they always put us kids first, right? As whatever disagreements they had, or they were always focused on us, and that's something that's not true for a lot of people.
Yeah, when the parents separate and if they don't talk anymore, it makes things extremely complicated for the child.
For sure.
Yeah. My parents separated when I was 7.
7.
Yeah, haven't seen him since. So it's just been my stepdad since then. Yeah.
And where did he go?
He remarried, and I think he was in Ontario for a while. I think he maybe went to the States for a little bit. But yeah, no one's heard from him or knows how to get a hold of him, which is kind of alarming, but I had to come to terms to it. But yeah, I know that my mom has done like everything she can with my new dad, and my new dad's like super supportive and has learned to become a father even in absence of having his own father. So it's pretty commendable. For sure,
100%. Like it sounds like as you've gotten older, you've gotten a close relationship with your stepfather, like closer. Like,
well, you know what? He's probably never going to listen to this, but when I learned to love him unconditionally, that was because of like the support that he showed me and his dedication to like our family and stuff, right? But we really don't have a whole lot in common. And I've come to realize it's like we don't need to be like, watching sports games in order to bond or love each other or like the same movies or the same taste in stuff in order to find these bonds. It can come through other things. And that's just like love for a family. And so that was a really powerful thing to learn about relationships in general. Because I've even tried to think of that as even, when we seek out like partners, sometimes we seek out like a partner that has all the same interests and similarities as us because we think that, that might be a good fit. But you can also find a really good fit with somebody who doesn't have all the same alignments as you. But when you come together, it's strong because you're not always talking about what each other really love about like their own personal lives. You can actually just meet on like a human level and bond in other ways.
For sure.
So, yeah.
There is a story the pastor of the church I grew up in told us, and I always thought about it, was he was talking to a guy, and the guy was telling that him and his son had just finished visiting all 50 states, the major league, like all the cities where the major league baseball teams were,
Cool.
right? And the pastor's like, wow, you must really love baseball. And the guy's like, no, actually, I don't really like it, but my son does. And I like spending time with my son.
Cool.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Does it because he knows that it's going to make the son happy.
Yeah, and he likes spending time like in that bond, right?
Mm-hmm. Just seeing the kid have joy and do what they enjoy or love. Yeah. That does a lot for a father, probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
How was it for you growing, like, just seeing your father disappear? Like, what was that like? Make sure you.
Well, the reason why I asked you about did you ever feel like ungrounded when you like went from home to home was because like I reflected on like when I used to have to go to my dad's because they had an agreement to be sharing custody at the time. But I remember just like I can reflect on like the feelings in my body of like just cringing when I was there. And that's because like when I was like 7 years old, my dad like he gave me like he beat me up. Like he gave me like a really bad like spanking, and it was for
your father.
Yeah, my real dad.
Okay,
my real dad. Yeah.
Okay.
And he did this because he told me not to swim in the deep end when he wasn't home. But I did, and my stepmom was actually helping me by holding out the skimmer and letting me hold on to it and walking around.
Yeah.
So it's extremely confusing that she's helping me and he's telling me that I can't.
Yes.
And then I remember being up in my room. Now, my dad came home from work and all I wanted to do was see him. I kept calling his name to the point to where it was probably annoying, but I'm just a kid at this point. He comes up and rages and just like starts beating me, right? But that was the last time I think that was one of the last times that I saw him. And I don't have a whole lot of memories from him besides that. But I've done a lot of work on these things. And I used to think that like, because of that incident, I would be scared to swim or I would have some kind of fear around it.
You had this.
I created the idea that like I should have a fear around swimming because of the trauma that happened, but that wasn't the case. One thing that like my astrologer of all people helped me understand when I kind of said just the same thing that I said to you, I said to her, she says, well, you could be afraid of making a mistake. And that mistake was swimming the deep end. And I was like, oh, that feels real. And it 100% is still with me till this day. I'm still scared of making mistakes. My first 3 months at my job now, nervous system completely out of whack because I wanted to do a good job. I didn't want to screw up. I wanted to get a good performance report, and I wanted to be recognized that I was doing good. So it's like, it's interesting how this has unfolded in a way that is doing good for me, but came from a place that no child should experience.
For sure.
Yeah.
I've had this thought too, like no child should experience, right? Is I think as a parent, as a child who's growing up, one thing that you want is for them to have some challenging, hard times so that they can realize what it's like to face adversity and like move forward, right? And not be disillusioned that like life's easy or that everything's about you or, you know, that kind of thing. But at the same time, you don't want your child going through a painful like experience, right? So for people who've experienced those hard things, like it's unfortunate that you have it, but I think it can make you stronger. At the same time, for the childs that don't have to go through that, how do you teach them those hard experiences? Like, because I wonder about having children if I ever have children, you know, like I don't want them to go through something difficult, but how would I raise them to show them adversity?
That's a good question. Because like adversity, so a challenge, a problem, a hardship, which is kind of the realm that we're talking about.
Yes.
Well, who gets to decide what the degree of that is?
Sure.
We can never prevent the child from falling down, scraping their knee and experiencing that pain.
Yes.
We'll never be able to prevent them from having a classmate steal a toy from them and them having to suffer extreme loss because their Power Ranger just got stolen from them, right? Like, we don't know how the child interprets that moment.
Yes.
But in comparison to the degree of like where it's violent, yeah, I think that's out of the picture.
For sure.
I don't think there's a way of having a child avoid some of these small moments that can be big to the child, but are really important stepping stones in growth.
For sure. And I think it's necessary. It's important for them to have those things, right? Like to have adversity in small doses and gradually get bigger so that when something does in your life happen unexpected, that you can get through them, right?
By building like resilience to each time you've overcome it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like losing your first partner and then the next one is for just a different reason.
For sure.
And on and on.
Or like you said, like losing friends, right?
Yeah.
Or like family or...
Yeah. Friends, I haven't lost a family member yet. So...
And these are things I think would be beneficial to teach in school, like some of these skills, right? Like, or at least talk about them, right? Like talk about adversity or loss, or like we're so focused on education that is like mental exercises or math problems or you know, but we don't speak a lot to like emotions or just like how to grow up as an adult. You know, like I think some of those things would be beneficial, and it's not only like emotional, right? Like it's facing adversity, having conversations with people, right? Like being able to talk to someone with a different viewpoint. Like these are things that I don't think we do well teaching in our education system. It's fine there.
Conflict resolution.
Yes, that's a huge one. That's a huge
nonviolent
one.
Communication.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe schools, I don't know, I never went to secondary school, but like maybe schools could put more focus on seeing how learning these things can be supportive of the progressive conditions that they're trying to imply on them so that a student does become successful or productive.
Sure.
You know? There's so many underlying things that'll be supportive of that I think are being overlooked.
I agree.
But I'm not a parent. I don't really know. I don't know what's good for children.
No, I absolutely. 100%. Like what you say, like I recognize that not being a parent, how like it's wrong for me to say like this is how you should raise your kid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I've got a couple friends with parents, and I can learn and listen vicariously through them and hear about the things that they've had to overcome and sacrifices that they've made and how it's made them just become incredible parents and loving parents.
Do you want to be a parent?
I could be.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be.
You think you'd be a good dad?
Yeah, for sure. Only because I know what not to do.
You know, my dad told me this once. He's like, son, like this is how he says, like, son, if you look at how I have lived my relationships, if you do the exact opposite, I think you'll be fine.
Hey. That's good.
Yes. And I think him talking in that way, maybe on a subconscious level, helps you recognize that he sees flaws in himself. And that's something that he often with me talk about self-reflection. You know, like, these are things in my life, like, I could do better. And I think that's important to have those conversations.
Yeah, hearing those words come out of like a father's mouth.
For sure.
Gold.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad that you were able to get those.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there's, who knows if that's like a common thing among fathers or not. I don't know.
And I think everyone has a different experience.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. Meaning that some fathers are very good at some things and others are not, right? And we all have things that we're good at, and to what you're alluding earlier, right? Like, even as being a father, there are some fathers who might be good at one area, but maybe not good at another area.
Yeah. And maybe that's where the co-parenting happens. Like, they lean on each other to be,
For sure.
To be lifting each other up and, to teach their children. Yeah. I gotta hit the washer.
Yeah. We can. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Like, or did you want to pause and come back, or did you want to end this? Like,
I don't know. What did you write in your email? Did you cover everything?
You know what? Yeah, let's pause, and then worst case, we'll come back and have a goodbye. Yeah. Well, Andrew, it's been a pleasure having you on. I didn't give you a chance to introduce yourself, so why don't you do that at the end here?
Oh God. What do you even say? Like,
your name and like it's Andrew Fredericks. Fredericks.
Yeah, there's an E between the D and the R.
Okay.
Everybody gets that wrong.
Fredericks.
Yeah.
Fredericks.
Yeah.
My father's name was Freddie, but like literally Freddy.
No, right on.
Yeah.
Like Mercury.
Yes. So Andrew Fredericks, everybody. From jail to yoga.
Yeah. What a trip it's been.
Yes, it's a story I think that's very that people will find helpful to them. Like, it's insightful.
I mean, it has been. Full circle, I'm volunteering with Correctional Services of Canada now, helping some of the people who have gotten out of prison, because it's a tough gig for them. So the least I can do is be helping them with their experience to be changing their lives as well too. So.
Have you ever thought of being like a step brother? Like, what's that program called? Like
Big Brothers?
Big Brothers, yes.
No, I don't know if I want to go into that. I mean, I do life coaching here and there, but like just for like a few people.
Sure.
And I mean, I feel like I would be more effective there than as a big brother.
Do you charge for your life coaching services, or?
So right now I'm doing practice hours, but no, I haven't charged anybody yet.
Okay.
Yeah. I want to get there one day, but I don't really know how I feel about the term life coach and what to put a price on these things. It's difficult for me.
Yeah. I understand that one. Like, I almost feel like part of a life coach is like doing it like just out of being a good person to somebody, right?
Yeah, be the best hype man for someone. Like
For sure, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's you get more out of me that way. Yeah. Otherwise, when there's like a dollar amount included in it, then there's like pressure to deliver a certain outcome, right? Whereas just like the way that I was trained for life coaching was to draw the answers out of the guest.
Sure.
Ask questions. So I'm not giving you advice. I've actually learned to become a better listener and to ask the right questions to get the answers from you and then see, okay, well, what would it look like to get you there? How can we get you there? What are some milestones that we can set, right? So yeah, I prefer that approach.
And it seems like the line between life coach and therapist is kind of blurred, right? Like particularly when you're asking that way, like like therapists who I haven't done a lot of therapy myself, so I can't speak from experience, but like when they ask those type of questions versus telling you.
Well, pretty early on, I draw that line, letting them know. I ask them if they have a support circle for like emotional things, family things, relationship things.
Gotcha.
Do you have a support circle for that? I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I won't give advice unless someone has asked. That was something that was actually really ingrained into the training that I took. And in 2021, taking that program was really good for me because I knew that I had to learn to become a better listener. And it's not always about giving advice. Like, yeah, we've talked about like my past and stuff like that and the life experience that like I've lived. Yeah, I might have some golden nuggets of advice and stuff, but what works for me isn't going to work for everybody.
100%. I think that's a good perspective to have.
Yeah.
Seriously. Like, I think sometimes people get in a frame of mind when like, what's good for me is good for everybody, right? And that's not the case.
No, that's very dictatorish. Yeah. I don't want to be like that.
Either do I. I used to be a kind of like a manager, kind of like I used to manage a team, and I found just letting people be unique and then train and changing how I deal with people based on them was much more successful, right? Than I'm going to be the same way for everybody.
Such a valuable lesson, eh?
100%.
Yeah.
And like, I even realized this, like when you're interacting with your friends, right? Like I'm assuming that you have a wide variety of friends who are very different people. I'm assuming you don't act the same way amongst all your friends.
It's so interesting that you asked that because it's just like, we act a certain way around our parents, but we wouldn't act that way around like a certain friend or around like a coworker, right? So yeah, no, there's parts of my life where like I feel like I need to like turn it down in some areas, and then there's friends where I can just completely be me, and I never always used to have that skill, and that's only something that has like kind of come up over like the last few years. So it's I want to live like just like an unfiltered life with just like anybody, but that just means that I need to be more particular about who I allow in.
For sure.
Yeah.
I had I've had this experience a few times where I'm a pretty big jokester. Like if you truly get to know me, I joke pretty much about everything. About like no subject, like no subject matter is off limits to me. And like I'll go hard, like I go things that will get you canceled, like that kind of thing. And I actually had a recent experience where I was joking too much with one of my friends in like a social group text situation. It was too boundary for them, right? And then what it realized for me is I need to find people, not like it's good to have those friends, but I need to find someone or some people who I can joke that way with and it be okay.
Yeah.
Like And that's not going to be all your relationships, but I at least need one person that I can do that with.
Yeah, because like you said, you value that First Amendment of freedom of
Yes,
speech. 100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And like sometimes you just say stuff like maybe it sounds hurtful, but you're not trying to be hurtful. You're just trying to have a joke, right? You know, like you're trying to laugh because when you've had hard life experiences, laughing about things or even those experiences, it helps in a way, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it can. I think it can be like healing in some of these situations, and then there's situations where it's not, and I think those are. Yeah, maybe we don't need someone like that in our life, or maybe we want to take a lesson from it and learn, okay, why was it like that for that person? Okay, well, that's, their experience. And the best we can do is just like, take that in and learn from it and keep the right people close.
And at the same time, it's also, I've had the opposite experience where I've had people like, hey, like maybe you shouldn't say that, or like you should, and it's maybe like, self-reflected you, like maybe in that joke I was being aggressive, or I like there's something else going on that you say something that might be kind of hurtful, and for if you're not around the right person, they might take offense to it, but two, it's also moderating yourself.
You know what the worst part is when people will go like, well, it sounds like you're saying, or you're basically saying
yes,
something triggering. Like,
yes.
It's like, how did we get there?
Yeah.
So yeah, like, it's tough. Navigating like in the social climate these days can be challenging.
For sure. And I like, one thing for me that I've realized later in my life is the early part of my life is that I spent a lot of time alone, right? I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I was picked on a lot. So I spent a lot of time of my early childhood alone, or like even like, and so like, through grade school and things like that. And then because of that, I had like a tendency not to interact with people in my like early 20s and stuff, right? Because I was taking that experience with me, right? So a lot of the social learning skills I've done, it's been in the later part of my life. Like that's like an interesting from like me to like go through that, like, oh, like.
Yeah, dude. Like before prison, it was always getting along with one another was like, poking jokes at each other, right? And like taking them down a peg or two, right? But just razzing each other, right? And then to get out and it's like, 2012, and making fun of people isn't cool anymore. And and having to learn to find like, what do I feel okay joking about? And totally like having to like just relearn myself. And it's but I think like that's what just keeps us growing as people, and
for sure
keeps us interesting.
And I think recognizing, like we were saying earlier, your faults, like your things to overcome, like I think a person should always be growing.
I never get to a place where there's this quote that I used to say when I was like 18 that I didn't listen to until I was like 30, but it said, how did it go again? If you think you know too much, there's little room to grow. Or if you think you know it all, there's little room to grow. Because like growing up, we were always know-it-alls, right?
Yeah,
parents wouldn't tell us.
For sure, yeah.
But being a know-it-all, there's no room to grow if I think I'm a know-it-all.
100%. You're absolutely right on that.
So only learning to apply that 10 years later had to be done.
And then there's also this saying that like every 7 or 10 years, like you're not the same person.
I heard that in the movie too. Every 7 years, every single molecule in our body just changes. So technically we are a brand new person.
I've heard that too. Actually, my physio was saying that because I've been working, like I was telling you, on my posture.
Yeah.
And then I had one doctor once tell me, like, I think like this is permanent, right?
Oh.
And then she's like, come on, like every cell in your body over some time gets changed out. So how can it be permanent? You know, like.
Yeah, when I first heard that, I started to tie it back to like my ages of like, okay, 7, 14. What happened when I was 21, 28, 35. Oh yeah, 35. And seeing some life events and things that happen. But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, very cool, my friend.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you coming on the podcast,
man.
And you know, so supporting me for sure, because you know, I feel like that's a support, you know, and it's a pleasure talking with you.
Dude, like being one of your first few guests on this, like so grateful for you to invite me down here. It's just crazy how it all happened. Like the conversation, the vibe with you is just spot on. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I will say this too, is I never, the things that we talked about, you have such you have a story that, like, when I talk to you, you know, like in yoga, like I never expected you to have such a complex story background, right? Because you seem like this chill guy and like almost straight edge, you know, like you know, like you. It's interesting. Like when I reached out and then you started to share like your story, I'm like, oh, like this guy has some interesting things to share.
Yeah, because I've learned that in that role, you're expected to be a certain way, or someone's like going to view you in a certain way. And it's not easy to just like, to always just like be yourself or show yourself, right? Because I just never know like who's judging. That's just a fear that like I'm learning to get over. So yeah, I was happy to do this. It's like definitely felt safe enough. And yeah, man, this is cool.
And the last thing I'll say is, out of all the conversations I've had with you, I've enjoyed this the most. And I felt like I've gotten to know you, like the real you, more. And you shouldn't be scared to share yourself, right? Because you're a good person. You have a great story, and I think you're going places. And own it.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. That's yeah. Thanks for laying that on me. I needed to hear that. And yeah, I mean, you know, I was looking forward to, you know, hearing the parts about your life that, you know, I didn't get to learn in teacher training and stuff, right? You know, we studied a lot in those 6 weeks, but yeah, we didn't really get into the personal stuff. And I'm always so interested in like each of the students and like where they came from and what brought them here. But like, I'm also like, it's also not my role to be like asking like personal stuff and knowing these, you know? So it's like, it's a catch-22. It
is like, it's an interesting environment to like, you're trying to learn and share and stuff, but you don't want to poke too much, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a line, because there's some people that come on with so much baggage and they want to overshare, you know, or take the stage center, or like, so it's
yeah, that can happen
for sure. Well, thank you again, my friend.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's much appreciated.
Right. We'll have you on again for sure.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Part 2. All right.
All right, part 2. All right. Thanks, everyone, and have a good one.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.